I'm sorry for the short notice on this delegation meeting. However, I felt that based on the auditors' comments at the June 25th meeting and our responsibility in relationship to the financial integrity of the county, along with the fact that we have a request for a supplemental budget because the nursing home has come to agreement on their union contract, that it was essential that we had an understanding of what was going on. I had requested that Mr. Billy be here this morning. However, he was unable to attend because of prior commitments and the relatively short notice. However, I did speak with him, and as we go through here today, I will highlight some of the things that that he said. But I'd like to start out with what I understand is the timeline of what has been going on. And if the commissioners or Kathy or the treasurer, if my dates are wrong, I would appreciate them being corrected. But this is what I know from the comments that have been made. So, Mason and Rich had been doing the accounting and the auditing through 2009. In 2010, John Lyford was doing the accounting. Now, whether he was employed by Mason and Rich or he was on his own or whatever, I couldn't figure that out. However, there was no audit completed in 2010. Why that occurred, I don't know. I don't know if it was because we had not contracted with Mason and Rich to accomplish that audit or not. And Mr. Lyford did do the accounting. However, when the Bulio firm became involved, they found that there were significant adjustments that needed to be made with the financial statements that had not been made. In 2011, the financial statements were completed and were received by the Bulio firm. In 2012, the commissioners contracted with the accounting side of Bulio to prepare the financial statements for 2012. As I understand it, they were hired to do the financial statements, but the monthly reconciliations had been accomplished by the county. In 2013, Bulio was hired to do the audits for 2011 and 2012. While they were working on the 2011 audit, they discovered that no audit, financial statements, or complete reconciliations had been accomplished for 2010. The county then contracted with them to do the 2010 audit, and they found some substantial problems with the financial statements. They identified the problems to the county. It's my understanding that an email was sent to Commissioner Babson, which I asked for and was told that it had been deleted, and so he did not have it. When I spoke to Kathy Gary and asked her to forward it to me, she also told me she did not have it. So,
point of order. I asked him to forward it to me. I have it, so I can forward it to you.
okay, thank you. Well, I'm just saying that from my perspective, anyhow, I had not received it, so I don't know what the problems are.
May I correct you, Madam Chair?
Sure.
I received that email, and I immediately asked Mr. Bulio to send it to the business office because it wasn't just my choice. And he said in the meeting that he had done that.
Right. But I don't know who in the business office had it.
Well, I'm
Because-
just saying, I didn't, but I
Right.
did my job.
Now.
She has it now.
Now.
Anyhow, my point is, I haven't received it. On June 7th, I believe is the correct date, Julio sent a letter of engagement to the county to correct the 2010 financial records. And no action has been taken on that letter since the 7th of June. It was evident that people in the county were aware that there were problems with the 2010 financial records. On June 25th, Ron Bulio met with the commissioners to discuss the problems with the 2010 financial statements, and again asked for the engagement letter to be signed. However, at the meeting, the commissioners decided to contact Mason and Rich to see if they would do the 2010 cleanup. At this time, they have been unable to get any sort of commitment from Mason and Rich on that action. I spoke to Ron Bellew, and I'm sorry I didn't write the date down, but he believes that it would take their firm 2 to 3 weeks to clean up the 2010 financials so that the audit could be completed. And as he stated, he cannot continue with 2011 until he can't start on 2011 until 2010 is completed. There is currently no audit contract for 13 or 14. What there is a contract with them for the financial statements for 13. And we have nothing in place for 14. RBL company did do some work in 13 on the nursing home for Medicaid and Medicare so that the nursing home could receive those payments. He also recommended that we not use surplus until the 2013 audit is complete, as the dollars may not be available. So that's what I know of the history and what has occurred. I cannot what I'm passing out now is what the delegation has been given in regards to the expenditures. And I asked for 20 copies, so hopefully there's enough to go around. The first page here shows that in December of 2012, down at the bottom, where it talks about county auditors, it shows that zero had been expensed on December 6th. However, what we were given on the 25th of March 2013, next page down at the bottom, is that they had in fact expensed in 2012 $13,400 for the auditor. So sometime between the 6th of December and the 25th of March, that money had been expended for auditors. Yes?
What you're saying is in the column that's at 12/31/12. Okay, thank you.
If you go to the next page at the top, once again in October of 2013, you will see that nothing has been expended for the auditor. The same is true on the next page, which is October of 2013. However, in 2014, and my page has the date messed up, but I believe it was March of 2014, we see that they once again had spent the $15,000 on the auditor. And I just happen to have these old things at home. And I was going through them and came across this. And so I'm not exactly sure how that happened, because our treasurer has indicated that we have not expended any money for an auditor during this time, but yet, according to the documents that we were given on the expenditure worksheet, which we're supposed to use for our budgeting purposes, it shows that it was expensed for auditing. So I bring that up because I think that this is, if this is a entry error, that's one thing. But I am concerned that this appears to be a pattern. And normally, when you hire someone to do financials, they are paid on a regular basis as they do the work. And I wanted to check to make sure that my thought process in that was correct. And so I went to an organization that I happen to be the clerk of and found that this is the financial statement of July from that organization. And it shows that they budgeted $25,000 and they have spent $3,873, which I didn't ask whether it, but I do know that they have someone that does the monthly reconciliation, so they pay them as well as work that the auditor is doing. So and I did not have an opportunity to read through the documents that I was given this morning, but I can't imagine any firm saying, well, don't pay me, don't pay me until I've completed all the work. So, Representative Cordelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the timeline and the investigation you did. I also did a little bit of investigation, or at least submitted an information request. And my information request primarily was for the transaction details from that auditor line in the budget for the years 2011, 12, and 13. And I'm sorry I don't have copies for everybody, but I can briefly tell you a little bit about each of those years. For the year 2011, the detail transactions from that county auditors line, and I think that they've used that line for, I don't know, 2009 and past, but it looks they're using that line for financial services, auditing, whatever, both. In 2011, there was a transaction for Mason and Rich in the amount of $3,300 plus for 2010 auditing services. There was a transaction for Mason and Rich for $2,600 for draft financials, the financial statements.
Do you have the dates of when those occurred?
This, I don't see a date on this.
Thank you.
Unless, excuse me, that last one could be November 18th of 2011. But then at the end of the year, 12/31, there was an encumbrance, and I think that's where some of this comes into play, for $7,381 for auditing in 2011. For auditing in 2011.
That's how it was booked.
That's how it was booked. So that totals to the $13,400, which had been the budget. What happened with that encumbrance, and whether there were any payments made for services from that, I do not know. If you look at that same auditor's line for 2012, again, it's $13,400, and on December 31st of 2012, the entire amount was encumbered. There were no other payments or transactions in that year. In 2013, because we were given the reason that Mr. Lyford had raised his fees to now $15,000. And so the budget for 2013 was $15,000 as opposed to the prior $13,400. The Below & Company on October 18th of 2013 was paid a retainer of $5,000. and there was an encumbrance made at the end of the year for $10,000 to total the $15,000. So clearly there was money encumbered in 2011, 12, and 13. We do not know what payments were made from that. I assume that those encumbered amounts from all accounts go into an assigned fund balance that perhaps, the commissioners or somebody can answer for us. But I think we need to know what was done with those encumbered amounts. Was someone paid? Because I think we're hearing that there were no financial statements done for 2011.
No, that's not correct.
Okay, there were financial statements done for 2011. There had been questions about who the financial statements were done by. We've heard that they were done by Mr. Lyford, but the accounting transaction is to Mason and Rich. A year ago, coincidentally, when the whole subject of financial audits had come up, I had requested copies of contracts for those services. This is the letter of agreement for contract accounting services dated January 19, 2012. This is with Mr. John Lyford, not Mason and Rich. It's on his personal letterhead. And it was signed by him, and I found it interesting that it was signed by Kathleen Gary rather than the commissioners. Likewise, there was a contract for accounting services, again, no letterhead, from Mr. Lyford for 2012 services. And again, signed by Mr. Lyford and Kathleen Gary. And this for 2012 services, his fees for both the county and the nursing home totaled over $15,000.
So if I'm hearing correctly, the $15,000 was only for the financial statements and not for an audit.
I believe that is correct. Okay. And for the for 2011 and 12 and 13, I believe that is correct. And if I could point out,
unless someone has further information that says there was an audit contract awarded.
When I got these contracts because he started asking questions about this in the spring of 2013, and it became clear to me, and confer back to the minutes from those meetings, that there was no clear understanding about what an audit was. I clearly brought in information from other audits that had been done in the state and read to the commissioners findings. The audit firm has findings of the statements and whether they adhere to accounting principles. Because I kept being told, look in the annual report. Our audit is in the annual report, but it was clearly not there. So in my mind, there has been a clear lack of understanding on the part of the commissioners of what an audit, financial audit, is or should be.
It would appear to me that sometime in 13, when they decided to hire Mr. Billiou and Company to actually do an audit. So I guess on August 6th, they got it. That was when this was dated and signed. On August 6th. So I would not disagree with what you're saying, that at least up until this time, there had not been any service for audits. And I am concerned that we have no service for an audit for 13 as well. And I realize we're halfway through 14, and we don't have anyone contracted to do either financial statements or an audit for 14. Yes, Steve? Did you?
Just a question, Madam Chair, and I'm not familiar with the answer. Does DRA require, under an existing RSA, that the county audit its financial statements on an annual basis?
And I believe that there's also a requirement that the audit statements have to be on file with DRA. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that that is the situation. Recognizing, of course, that it takes, after the close of the fiscal year,
Time lag.
it takes, through June, July, August, September, whatever, to complete the audit. But they should be done, the audit should be done prior to setting the tax rate, which occurs in November, or late October.
So just a quick follow-up. So then, based on the financials that you presented and what Representative Cordelli presented, and there's no evidence that any county monies were spent on anything other than the preparation of the financials, not the audit. Therefore, unless someone can prove differently, I think the conclusion is no audit work was performed for the time frames required, which is a violation of the RSAs and whatever. Am I correct in my assumption?
Glenn?
Thank you, Chair. To follow up, if I could, with that, I went back to take a look at the RSAs in relation to audits. And there is clearly a requirement for municipalities to do an annual audit. I could not find such a requirement for counties. And I have written to the Legislative Research Office to look at that and the history of the RSAs in that area and any changes that might have occurred and requirements for annual audits on the part of the counties. And they've gotten back to me and said that they will take a look at that for us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Following up on that, it would seem only reasonable to me that when we have a bond out there in the nursing home funds, it would seem to me that that and any other grant, in most other instances and any other organization that I belong to, require an annual audit. And I'd be surprised that that's not the case. Could I continue on?
Yeah. Unless Jane.
No, I'm just,
Jane, is there something on that?
Just getting in line.
Oh.
Okay, so it would appear to me that I would be more inclined to believe that it is necessary, and most any organization would require that. If I could ask a couple questions of Commissioner Solomon, Commissioner Sorensen, because the Commissioner is clearly the thread that runs us right through this. Commissioner was here in those years and those years forward. The present policy, if I remember right, there'd been some problems over the past year or 2 years as to if I wanted to send a question to the commissioners, that commissioners were having questions being submitted to them on private emails. And it turned out to be a problem because apparently this group of commissioners is much more diligent than I am in cleaning up my old emails, that emails get swept and get lost. So if I remember right, and I saw down in the commissioner's office downstairs that there's a statement posted that says all communications with the commissioners are supposed to go through an address that comes through Carroll County, this office. Am I correct on that?
Right.
So I guess my question is that a correspondence was sent to Representative Babson, and that, Commissioner Babson, I always remember you sitting behind me in the hall, that he shared or asked to be shared, and I can't even begin to imagine why that request from a vendor is going to personal emails and not going through your policy, which you have set up, which is coming into the county, which I believe then all three of you would be able to read at any time that you want. Are vendors being told to contact each of you individually? Have you made known to auditors and everyone else that all communication is supposed to go through that? Because it just seems absurd to me that I can understand the federal government might lose and have a crash, but with your policy in place, that seems absurd to me. Are you instructing in all RFPs and everything else that all emails come through that address?
That's correct.
So there's some
the office.
Yeah, somewhat of a snafu there, I see. One is are you as a commissioner aware of the difference between the term financial statement and an audit?
Yeah.
And my limited education, which I'll throw right out there, and my understanding of policies, financial policies, but I know that at the end of any audit, there's a statement that says omissions or corrections, actions you need to take forward. And I've been involved with some groups, as the rest of you have, you think are pretty solid, but there always seems to be an item or two there that you're going to look at and you're going to take care of next year. In 2009, did you receive, at the end of your audit, because it's my understanding that audits were happening on a yearly basis before that, in 2009, was there a note that's saying, you guys are in such good shape at the county that we don't need to do audits anymore going forward?
I don't remember seeing that.
I wouldn't think it would be there. So I asked the question, why did you, as a commissioner, in coming forward, make a conscious effort not to have audits going forward?
I didn't realize it wasn't an audit.
Is there so?
Well,
Okay,
if I might follow up with that. There were, in 2010, there were 3 commissioners. And Mark mentioned that you were the threat. But there was also a commissioner that had been on for 2 to 3 years, 2 years, I guess, as well as a new commissioner that was elected in November of 2010. And so and a commissioner that left in 2010. And none of you recognize that there was no audit out there.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment? I've been asking to still 2011. And I was been told and I was been showed there's audit done. This is what you actually handed out. I think it's very misleading. It said county auditors. No audits has been done. If you watch the previous delegation meetings, you will see people explaining and said, yeah, audit's been done, and that is the line, and they come in here for 5 days, and they audit everything, but nothing is true.
May I follow up?
Yep, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I was sorry to interrupt.
Oh,
but
no,
I
that's all right.
I just wanted to.
I'll bet you were a little amazed yourself, so you needed some clarification, so.
I just wanted to be sure that folks
The-
understood that it
I,
wasn't just.
and if I could, Representative Sorensen and
Commissioner.
Commissioner and the rest of the esteemed commissioners sitting there who have all been here a number of years. Representative Kenny had made her statement.
Commissioner Kenny.
Commissioner Kenny. It's actually, I'm giving you an upgrade, in my opinion.
It's not-
I'm assuming in 2009 and years previously that when you went out for an RFP or used the same company that you were using, which I guess we were using for a number of years there, that when you put out for that work, which had always been an audit previously, was there any follow-up? Did you use the same notice that went out? Or was there a conscious effort, was there a letter that went out and said, we don't need audits any longer, we're just looking for financial statements? And from 2011 through this year, when we as a delegation see a line that says audit, and having some familiarity with budgets and so forth, and we understand what an audit is, were the commissioners of the opinion that you were asking for financial statements and not for audits?
That's correct.
And is there any reason you can tell me why when you see that paperwork and there's no omissions and no corrections on there, that you thought we were getting what we needed? It seems beyond me. It would seem to me that it'd be the #1 responsibility for the Board of Commissioners to be watching and responsible for we have now a $25 million budget. And the most basic document that you need to protect our interests, and our interests being the people of Carroll County, is that we have an audit in place. I'm from listening to the meeting on June 25th. I hear no urgency whatsoever to get to the bottom of this. I sat there and listened to an accounting firm that pussyfooted around the questions. I saw commissioners running for cover about what the answers were to those. I'd spoken with Representative Unberger and thought it was necessary for us to come forward as a delegation so that we could ask questions to find out where we are. I'm appalled that in what I believe to be a serious situation, we don't have someone from an accounting firm sitting here to answer our questions, no matter what. I'm appalled that the commissioners asked someone to make a phone call to find some more forward information when we have the good sheriff's department there that we send around all the time, people do, to get people, to summons them, to find answers. I hear no urgency whatsoever out of your office, and I'm worried about that. And one last thing. What I do hear from this delegation that has been asking for items, who is working on different projects with the commissioners, whether that be on employees issues and other things. I keep hearing what I would consider snarky remarks back to make sure that we pay for our 50 cents per page to get copies of documents that should be forthcoming. That it just appalls me. So if the delegation has to set aside $20 so that we can make sure that we can get paperwork that we need, and I'm assuming that there's at least $20 left in our surplus, I would like to make that.
Maybe not.
What I say, what I,
2013 audit.
We might not
what-
want to add to the snarky comments.
what I say to my fellow delegation members here, whether we are sitting on solid ground to be able to, myself, to make those assertions, or for us to ask questions of the delegation, of the commissioners, I'm concerned that we've been making budgets for years and years and years and have no idea what's sitting in the bottom of that pot. And to have commissioners not know that. So what I ask is, I'm sure we're going to hear comment from everyone. I want the delegation to understand that this is the time to ask your questions. Who's here, what's said, and I would ask for no one to hold back. Thank you.
Did you have a response to
Yes, I
something
do.
that he
Thank you
said?
very much for the sarcastic and arrogant spanking, Representative McConkey. Would you mind telling us where we sat back and were pushed her all around last Wednesday? Could you give us some examples? It's easy to sit up there and criticize. You're never around here. Go ahead and tell us. Go ahead. It's right there. There was so much of it.
If all I would say, just so we don't go back and forth, is that I have occasion to sit and review the meetings by the internet as I'm working and doing other things. It's clear as can be that there was, and anyone that has watched that and asked people to see links, I may not speaking directly of you, but you are a member of one of three, that there was a lot put aside. And I won't comment on any other, be happy to talk to you about it afterwards.
So you can't give us any examples. Thank you very much.
Representative Chandler?
Thank you very much. I just want to, someone mentioned the towns being required to have an audit, and I don't want people to get too carried away and thinking that's a really very in-depth thing, because it's, if you choose to, you can hire an accounting firm to do one, but all you're required to do is have someone elected who may or may not have any particular training and fill out the state form and send it in and pay them $200 a year. So there's different levels of what you may expect. Is my understanding correct that the last audit we've had was 2009?
That's correct.
And is that, could we get a copy of that sometime, just so we could see what it does say at some point? Is that possible?
Could someone go down to?
Well, I don't, if we
Well-
can get it now, that'd be fine. I just would like to physically see something. Okay.
Dom, are you going to do that? Thank you. Go ahead. Sorry, Jim.
Does Tom have a question on this?
Is the 2009 audit complete?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
That's my understanding. Okay, we haven't had one since.
That's the last complete.
Right.
Okay.
And has Mr. Lyford responded? Obviously, Mr. Boulier, is that the right name?
Mm-hmm.
I'm concerned, as I said, I don't know as I'm wasting a day here, but I fully expected to be able to ask someone some questions about what he had found. So it is kind of disconcerting, and I consider it to possibly be a great waste of time that we're here without anyone, nothing personal, that can answer the question. So
I agree.
at some point, I hate to have another meeting, but I'd like to, if we're gonna do something about this, we need to talk to someone. So anyway, having said that,
But before you go on, I tried to get Mr. Bilyeu here this morning, and he was unavailable because of private commitments. I did send sort of a transcript out to everyone of his comments that were made on June 25th, as well as a copy of the minutes, the draft minutes. And he really cannot answer any questions about 2010 because the commissioners have not provided him with an accounting service engagement letter for 2010. And so all he has is, as he was trying to do, he doesn't have the information for 2010 that you're asking for.
well, he apparently has been commenting quite a bit on it.
Well, he has, but he.
So that's all I'd like to ask him.
But he doesn't, until the, whatever it's called, the engagement letter is signed for 2010. He has basically only provided some information to the commissioners that wasn't shared with the delegation.
And I'd like it to be shared with the delegation.
And that's,
Because that leads me to my next question. Has Mr. Lyford responded to Mr. Boulier's questions or concerns?
no.
Mr. Lyford is very sick. He has cancer. We have contacted Mason and Rich, and as Kathy Geary said earlier, the woman that is in charge there won't be back from vacation until tomorrow. I have the engagement letter right here. It's not signed for the financials for 2010. We want to make sure that if we paid Mason and Rich, we want to get the information from Mason and Rich and not have to pay Mr. Bulio extra money to do the financials. So we're waiting to do that.
And that's fine, you guys administer that all.
That's
My concern is, and there's all kinds of ways that you can do an audit and financial reports, and certain things go. I would like to be sure, I'm not doubting Mr. Boulier's credentials, don't know him, but I would like to have a response to see whether Mr. Lyford or Mason and Rich agree with some of his concerns. 'Cause
Right.
That's all. I think that's very important, that we find out that whether they agree or not, or how they explain what they did and why they did it the way they did it, as opposed to what Mr. Boulier thinks it should be done. That's all. There
Exactly.
could be legitimate
That's
differences.
why we made a phone call to Mason and Rich to find out.
the
I think we're ahead of where we should be. We're jumping to conclusions, and until we get the facts, I think it's a waste, as you had said earlier.
Well, my concern is, and I don't know Mr. Boulier, my concern is that while what he has brought up may be the way he would have interpreted what should have been done,
Yeah.
I'm not sure that the way it was interpreted was necessarily wrong, that's all. May have been different.
Yeah.
That's all I'm trying to say. And I think we need to know the Mason and Rich or Lyford defense or explanation of why they did what they did before we jump to too many conclusions, that's all I'm saying. Obviously, it is disconcerting we haven't had an audit completed for quite a while, but nonetheless, okay, thank you.
My concerns echo some of what Representative Chandler has said. I understand that Mr. Bolio's firm is willing to take on the responsibilities, the accounting responsibilities, and then to complete the audits.
Financials and audit.
Right. I don't like the idea that they have found a problem that they are now willing to correct, and then they are willing to audit and say it's right. I like the idea, and I don't know what the usual practice is of at least having a firm do the financial statement and then having somebody else audit it. It doesn't make sense to me that Bolio has said that the prepaid medical expenses, which were approved in the completed audit of 2009, are now in the financial statement and information relative in 2010 not acceptable by general accounting standards. It seems complex and confusing, and it sounds like we need to get answers from Mason and Rich before Bolio, from their perspective, makes the corrections and moves on. So that's a concern of mine. It seems to me that Mason and Rich have accepted responsibility and apparently accepted some money, and they need to be able to account for
Held
that.
accountable, right.
And I hope, as you have heard, that we can get that done in as efficient a manner as possible. And I also watched the tape of the June 25th meeting and didn't see that you were skirting the issue, but that you were trying to deal with it. And that seems to be the case now.
Harry?
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's my name.
Representative Merrill.
Thank you. You know, I'm concerned about
This is
this.
an
I'm
official
not,
meeting.
I'm an engineer, not an accountant, but I can balance my checkbook, okay?
And I'm concerned about this because all of this stuff that we're digging out here is important because it shows us things that were done wrong and needs to be done. But the things that I'm really, really concerned about and really want answers to, and I don't know where we stand on that, is not that did it happen, but why did it happen and how did it happen? And that's two of the questions that and what can be done to correct it. And the other thing that really bothers me is just exactly how much money do we have now? I don't think anybody knows. I mean, are we spending money we don't have, or do we need to raise the, are we gonna end up having to raise the tax rate or put special taxes to do it, God forbid? I mean, there's just, and I don't think there's enough, I don't know if you can move people any faster, because I haven't seen us or anybody else in government move very fast, but it needs to be moved. It needs to be settled, and it needs to be settled now, and that's my concern. I probably won't be here when it gets settled, but I hope so.
On the outside looking in.
Well, if I might, the reason that it needs to be settled is that we have to make a decision next month on how we're going to fund the $71,000 that the nursing home contract.
If I may just add to my comment.
And that's one of the reasons why, as we have been over a month now in trying to decide who was going to do what to whom on the 10 financials, that no action has been taken on that. And that's where my concern is.
It just seems to me that somewhere along the line, there's an awful lot of incompetence that's showing up.
Okay, were you next?
I think so.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you.
Representative
Crawford.
I'm just a tad bit confused about Mason and Rich and Mr. Lyford. So if you could clarify, when Representative Cordella said that there was a contract from Mr. Lyford, was he working for Mason and Rich? Was he working for himself? When we issued a check for that amount, was it issued to Mason and Rich, or was it the check made out to Mr. Lyford?
I'd have to check with Kathy Geary.
I think it's important that we know which is which, because who's taking responsibility? Is Mason and Rich taking responsibility for Mr. Lyford, or is Mason and Rich going to say, hey, that was Mr. Lyford's problem, not ours? And I'm also concerned if Mason and Rich did the audit in 2009 and didn't do an audit in 2010, did we pay for an audit in 2010? And where was it paid to Mr. Lyford? Was it paid to to Mason and Rich? And if it wasn't an audit and just a financial statement, why would Mason and Rich not say, or I just don't understand why an audit wasn't done and a financial statement, or would you always pay $15,000 for both? And I have concerns also about one firm doing both procedures, even though one hasn't been done in a few years. So I think there's, for myself, I'd like a clarification on, is it Mr. Lyford, is it Mason and Rich? Who's taking responsibility for what? And if we have any recourse, who do we go to?
We are going to Mason and Rich.
I believe
for the
the
financials.
treasurer has a comment on that.
Just for clarification, in 2010, the money that was paid to Mason and Rich, and it was only paid for the financial statements. There was no money paid in 2010 for an actual audit. So even John Lyford was working for Mason and Rich in 2010. The checks were cut to Mason and Rich in 2010 for his financial work. In 2011, he was no longer working for Mason and Rich, and the checks were cut for the financial statements he did in 2011. The checks were cut directly to John Lyford.
Thank you. May I just do a follow-up? Thank you. So my question, in 2009, we paid for financial statement and audit to Mason and Rich, and that was about 14,000, is that what I, okay. So in 2010, we paid the same amount of money? No, we didn't.
No, we didn't pay, I think it, I'd have to look exactly, I think it was about $7,000.
So it was less?
Yes, it was about the amount that you normally pay for the financial statements.
Okay, so would that not be a red flag to say, oh?
Yeah, I can't explain why it happened, but the numbers, I've seen the numbers. I don't know why the balance of 2010 didn't carry through during 2011. I don't know. Because again, as I explained before, the audit process is difficult because the financial statements get done after the close of the year, which is normally February or March from the prior year. Mm-hmm. The audit itself sometimes doesn't, most of the time, doesn't get completed and turned in for our review until December of the following year. And of course, by that time, the nursing home process was in the process and all that. And I think it really got lost in the shuffle, which is not an excuse, but I think that's with all the work that was going on with basically a two-person office. There was a lot of process happening, and I think things got missed. And that's probably where it fell through the cracks at that point in time.
Thank you.
And now that, and I guess just to follow up, now that Mr. Bolio was looking to do this work, I think it's certainly appropriate to go back to Mason and Rich to see if they can fix the financial statements and allow Mr. Bolio to finish the 2010 audit. But again, we can't really go back to 2009. That's audited, done, finished. So what's in the financials for 2009 are there. I think if Mr. Bolio has a good explanation of why he wants to make the changes for 2010, and they fall within the general accounting principles, then Mason and Rich should be able to look at those and say, yes, maybe we made some mistakes, we agree with these changes, they should be made, and let's move forward. So that's kind of where the process is now, I think. And I think it's a good idea. Mason and Rich was responsible initially for the statements. It was a good idea for them to finish them, fix them, correct them, and then allow Mr. Bolio to go forward and put the audit.
If I might, the concern that I have with that process is a timing one. And that's where my concern is. If this was back in May or June, when Mr. Bolio first identified the problem and the commissioners had gone to Mason and Rich at that time, then that's a different story. But we're now 2 months later, and we still are going to Mason and Rich to try to figure out what's going on.
And if I may, I don't disagree with you from a timing standpoint. I think it's important that we get this done as soon as possible. I personally was a little frustrated because I think I asked for Mr. Bolio to give me a complete explanation, and it turned out to be basically the email that Mr. Babson had gotten. I've seen the adjustments he wants to make, but there's no explanation for them. And that's what I've asked for. So, if we're going to give these to Mason and Rich to make adjustments, there has to be some documentation and some reason for making adjustments. One of them is clear. There's no question about the interest on the bond was recorded here. You get cash in, you record it, you record income, a mistake was made on the books, something that I think John Lyford probably should have caught. His firm said, oh yeah, we shouldn't have done that. So that part is easily fixed, and not a lot of explanation there. But let's have some explanation on the prepaid health insurance expense and why he feels it should be adjusted the way it should be. And some of the other minor adjustments, which are pretty minor, why he feels they should be done that way. He hasn't provided the documentation to say this is why I want it done.
And I wouldn't expect him to, because he doesn't have a...
He's a contract to do the audit.
Yeah, he doesn't have an engagement letter that says provide that information.
No, he does, because his engagement letter for the audit, and he said sitting at the table on the 25th, I can't finish the audit until the financial statements are completed. Well, if he's gonna hold you hostage for $15,000 to redo the financial statements to complete the audit, that's not appropriate. What is appropriate is for him to give the documentation he's found to Mason and Rich to say, this is what I found, this is what has to be corrected. They should correct the financials, provide them to him with his corrections. Now he should be able to fly through and finish his audit, because he's already done all the work saying, and he said, I can't give you a clear audit report until these financials are fixed.
You and I have a different opinion, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So, Tom, I believe you're next.
Does our financial system not provide for financial statements? At places that I've worked, the company did the financial statements, and then the auditing company came in and audited them. And I would think that our financial system would provide those statements. Is that asking too much?
Our financial system, as I understand it, does indeed provide that information. However, when you reconcile the books whenever you reconcile them, they should be reconciled at least once a year, but it would make sense to do them more often. There are times when things get put into the wrong accounting thing, whatever that is, and need to be adjusted into a different area. And that's what we pay the money for the reconciliation side of it to accomplish.
Okay.
So that when we go to the audit, that is all straight. Yes, there are financial statements that come out, but they may need some adjustments because we do not have professional accountants working for us, which is,
Maybe we should.
well,
Well, and that's what these people are supposed to do.
yeah, but that's why we hire,
Yeah.
okay? But yes, we do produce financial statements. And I mean every municipality, county, whoever, the state, all have to make financial adjustments based on placement of things. Am I correct, Jack?
You're good.
Steve, I believe you were, no, I'm sorry, Glenn.
Yes, just going back, following up on a few previous comments. 2011, the letter of agreement was on John Lyford letterhead, but the transaction shows Mason and Rich as the vendor, vendor number 1234. I would think at this point, 2 weeks or so after the June 25th meeting of the commissioners, that we could have at least found out who was actually paid for 2011. In terms of Representative McConkey's talk about time sensitivity and moving forward and getting answers, I would have hoped that there would have been a July 2nd meeting of the commissioners where additional follow-up work and questions could be raised. I would be interested. We've heard that phone calls were placed to Mason and Rich about the 2010 corrections. Do we know when that phone call was placed?
The young lady is on vacation.
Right. Do you know when the call was placed to Mason and Rich?
Right after the meeting. Yeah.
Okay.
Right after. And the commissioners did not meet last week.
Right, I know, and I was disappointed to hear that because I thought with the urgency of this, because there are a lot of other things besides just these adjustments that have come to light. One, the fact that we are not reconciling accounts. That same day, June 25th, we had a subcommittee meeting to get a preliminary report from the matrix firm that is doing the performance audit. And we will have, hopefully within a few weeks, a draft report from them. But they did lay out some additional disturbing information, such as the fact that there is no policy in the county to deal with cash transactions. How do we deal with cash in the various departments? Jail and other departments. There is no policy related to that. That was just one thing that comes to my mind from that conversation. And if I could ask a question about some of this detail in terms of encumbrances. In 2011, 12, and 13, monies from the auditor's line was encumbered. And we've heard that the audits would not be completed typically until after the books were closed and everything else into the following year, which is perfectly understandable. But I'm just wondering, where would we get information about these encumbrances? What accounts do those encumbered funds go to? Is there an assigned fund that would contain these encumbered amounts? And do we need to get transactions from that assigned fund? If those encumbered funds, whether it be from the auditor's line or any other line where money is encumbered, if it is not actually paid, what account does that money go into? Does that go into an unassigned fund balance, and would be the subject of some of our discussions in terms of budget and taxpayer rates and everything else? So I'm looking to find information as to these year-end encumbrances and what is the follow-up and what payments are made for these financial and or auditing services from those encumbered funds.
Yeah, I can go make copies. This is a list of the encumbrances and what was charged to during this process with Bollier's office. When it was referred to 11 or 12, it was charged to the encumbrances for those rather than current year. So the money was encumbered, so I can make copies of this.
You're on my list, but I'm next.
Gotcha, Dave.
Okay. Steve is, I'm sorry, Representative Schmidt is next.
I like Steve, too. That's fine. What normally happens in these meetings, we're going around and beating this to death, but let me see if I can try to make some sense out of this. We had a contract with Mason and Rich for 2010, correct?
Correct.
Only for financial statements.
Okay. In 2011, we had a contract with Mr. Lyford. All right. Point one.
Financial statements.
Point one, looking at 2011, 12, and 13, where the contracts are let from Mr. Lyford, appears to me to be a complete waste of time. If the man is apparently dying, what are we going to do? So, we have the 2010 contract. I think we should concentrate on that with Mason and Rich. Point two. I think this county ought to get a registered letter out to Mason and Rich immediately. Point three, when you get into prepaid insurance where you have a statement from a certified public accountant that it was booked incorrectly, unless the accounting standards changed from 2010, which is a possibility, into 2014, it's an error. It's not a decision. It goes into one block or the other. There's no mystery to it. And the same thing goes with the prepaid interest. That certified letter should demand that because of the second accountant's presentation, that they go back and correct this. And you should sign it. No phone calls. You should also state in the letter that if they don't satisfactorily respond to you, then you will go to the Board of Accounting. They don't like that. That's a professional licensing board. No one likes to be threatened with losing their license. all I can say is do it, and do it quickly. Thank you.
Can I add a thought to that? I'm sorry to jump. And I don't disagree with that. The only thing is, instead of telling them to correct it, ask them if they believe it should be corrected.
Yeah.
I will guarantee you that if Mr. Boulia finishes up a report here for whatever year it is, and you give it to some other accounting firm, they're going to find some problem. They're going to say, well, I wouldn't have done that this way, and I'm not sure. That's what happens. So I think they have to have the right to say, this is why we did it, and this is why it was correct,
I
or
agree.
not, that's all.
I
That's all
agree.
I'm
If I
saying.
could just follow up.
But-
Frankly, it's not rocket science when you get into these broad accounting principles. If you have a prepaid expense or a revenue coming in, how you book it is defined clearly under generally accepted accounting principles. There's not a lot of gray there. And what you're doing is you're paying a professional accountant, a certified, to ensure that it goes into the right bucket. You know, if you have two firms that say, I think you should have done it, booked it this way, and another one says we booked it this way, boy, we're all in trouble. Seriously, I mean, it shouldn't happen. You know, that's why we have certified public accountants. That's why they have to meet standards under a professional board and to be licensed. And they're accountable for their errors. So again, certified letter, registered letter, you got a problem here. The bottom line is, we don't know how much we have in surplus. That's a big deal. It really is a big deal.
Yeah, since we've spent since then about $4 million out of surplus.
As far as I'm concerned, you can't get that letter out of here fast enough. And forget the phone calls.
Okay. Commissioner Babson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to make 2 points, clear one thing up. The discussion about this discrepancy came up in an email from Mr. Boulia sometime in the week preceding June 25th. I've heard May, I've heard 1st of June. It didn't happen then. It happened somewhere between the 20th of June forward. He sent us a letter, a heads up. It looks like you've got a $900,000 discrepancy here. We called him in immediately. He came in on Wednesday and to discuss it. So there wasn't any delay that everybody seemed to think that we had here. The second thing is, Commissioner Representative Cardelli, your group doing the performance audit, one of the very first things we did when I got here was to come up with a process for handling cash. Each department head came in here and told us how they were handling cash, put it in writing, and I don't know what your crew didn't find.
True.
Representative Lavender.
When the dust settles from all of this, I think another minor conversation that we ought to have is whether or not we feel that GAAP accounting is appropriate for the county. There's a number of different accounting techniques, and GAAP accounting was developed for for-profit companies. Then you have insurance accounting, which is another animal, and I don't know what there is an accounting for government, whose name I don't remember, and I don't think it's necessarily successful, but I think that we at least ought to spend a little bit of time thinking about it.
Can I?
Mr. Wheaton, your comments on that?
Yes, or just
No,
comment?
not you, the
Oh,
treasurer.
Well, I agree to an extent. There are several different accounting types of boards out there. There's government accounting, standards boards, there's all kinds of different boards. Part of the process with the county, which makes it different than a for-profit business for sure, is that you have different things you have to account for. You're not just accounting for a business. You have the nursing home, you have the county operation, you have registry of deeds, you got the county jail, you got the attorney's office, you got all these different functions that aren't just as simple as saying, oh, that's A, B, and C. Each one of them has its own type of reporting that needs to be done. So I think it certainly might be appropriate. I don't know what the difference is in all of the different types of rules and regulations there, but certainly worth looking at and seeing what standards the different firms are looking at. You may have a CPA firm like Bolio, who is using the government accounting standard board functions as opposed to GAAP accounting, because that's more appropriate for county use. And maybe that's why they are part of the few firms out there that are still doing county audits. So I think it's appropriate to look at that, but you know, that's a decision down the road after we clean up.
Okay, does anyone have anything to actually move the discussion forward? Representative Nelson.
Thank you very much. I just have one question to add to this. Has any indication been made that there could be some foul play in all this money missing?
Absolutely not. Mr. Bolio has said that these are strictly accounting issues that were done maybe without the knowledge of proper accounting functions. The one that really comes to mind is the interest on the bond. That's the big one. That's $600,000. We took in $600,000 of cash. We recorded it as $600,000 worth of income. That was a mistake on our part inside the office. It's something that Mr. Lyford probably should have picked up on, which he didn't. That $600,000 should have been spread over the 20 years of the bond. That was a simple accounting error, but absolutely no indication that there's any foul play or any missing money. Different accounting process, but certainly no issues with the general process.
I believe that Mr. Bolio has said that it is maintenance and repair of the financial statement. And at this point, he saw no reason for him as an auditor to believe that there was anything going on other than that. Okay. But there's a lot of maintenance and repair according to his firm for 2010. And he has not looked at, well, he's received the financials for 2011, and he has done the financials for 2012. So the only year that is in question is 2010 in regards to the financials. Although he did say that there is also maintenance and repair required for 2011. And that's where money goes. And of course, as the treasurer has pointed out, he has identified about $900,000 worth of bookkeeping errors. One on the bond, and the second one on the health insurance. Health insurance. Those two things account for the $900,000. Okay, now whether there's other things in there or not, he was not of the opinion that it wasn't something that couldn't be fixed. But he also indicated that if 2010 was not fixed, then he would have to do, I guess, what's called a negative opinion. And that's something I don't think that any of us want to do. So, Representative Nelson, did you have something else? No, okay.
I have.
You're not next, I'm sorry. Representative McConkey.
Thank you. If I could follow up on a little something Representative Cordelli said and Commissioner Babson made comment to. When we heard from the Matrix last week, or whatever date that was, 25th, I believe, and they were talking preliminary to inform our subcommittee where they were at that time. And they had said at that time that they were 2 weeks out from giving us our preliminary report, so that's probably a week away. And my understanding is that the Matrix had gone and spoken with every department head and asked them specific questions. And one of the questions I believe that they'd asked was a cash policy. So if the Commissioner's office has a unified cash policy, how it's handled, reconciled, and distributed, it would be probably helpful if you think he's in error in not knowing about it, that's provided to me so that I can send that off immediately, because wouldn't want something incorrect there. So if that's available, he was on the opinion that the Commissioner's office did not indeed have a policy. But there was another item that he brought up that he talked about, that accounts are not reconciled for months at a time. One of the other representatives here spoke about a checkbook and how you handle your own checkbook at your house, and not looking at it for months at a time. And I believe one of the comments was that at times it's not done for 5 or 6 months. Tells me that certainly isn't very good policy.
It's being done presently.
It's good to see that we're having some effect. So those are, and my further understanding is that this delegation is probably not to make any decisions on where to spend surplus money this year, at the end of this year, until the audits are done all the way to 2013, because that balance, which was the impression of being $4 million, and then was reported as being possibly $1.7 million, which is real money. I believe the reporter had asked about that there may not even be that amount, and we won't know that amount until all of this is done. So I would agree with Representative Smith, and I would have thought good practice would have already had those certified letters out and already done at this time. And anything and everything you can do to light fires under anybody's fanny to get this done, I think would be of great benefit to the county.
Representative Chandler?
Yes, thank you. You mentioned something about moving forward, so I'd like to propose something, and I guess not for a vote, but just for the commission. I just think that, with all due respect to everyone, I think we've had it. We all know what the problems are now, where they lie or why they happened. I'm not sure of that, but nonetheless. But I think we really have to have an answer from Mason and Rich, and I hope how we get that quickly. It will be up to the commissioners to endeavor to get that by certified letter, carrier pigeon, I don't know, but somehow get something back from them, their response. Do they agree with these findings, don't agree? If they do agree or they don't agree, why? And also from Mr. Boulier, as the treasurer mentioned, he's got to tell you or somebody why he thinks that he's right, and that's all. And then I think we should schedule a meeting. Now, my thought would be, maybe, Madam Chairman, if you schedule a meeting and we tell these people, Mr. Boyer, you have to be here, and Mason and Rich, you can either be here or give us the answers ahead of time. And if, I don't know if 2 weeks is enough time for them to do this, or 3, whatever, you can work that out and actually schedule a meeting so the commissioners can tell the appropriate parties, this is when we want to see you, and do it. Now, I don't know how much time, and you'll have to figure that out, but I mean, it has to be enough time so we can get the answers, but not too much time that holds us up from doing what we need to do. So that's, I would suggest that. Yeah.
I don't disagree with that. My concern is we have between now and August 11th, which is when we need to make the decision on. That's when the supplemental budget request to discuss that.
Okay, but I don't think we're bound to have to make a decision on August 11th, are we?
We're bound because of the
September 1.
Yeah, is because of the rate setting for the state when they set the tax rate for the county.
Well, but that's not till September.
It's,
Right.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I mean, if we do it by August, I don't think we have to make a decision on August 11th, that's all I'm saying.
no, we probably don't.
Yeah.
But I also don't want to end up August 30th. And, you know.
Well, I don't disagree, and that's a goal to shoot for, but I hate to shoot for a goal that we don't have to meet and not get this done the right way, that's all, I guess. Because
There's no question that this whole ball of wax has thrown, you know, a monkey wrench in our system.
and if you want to meet on August 11th, and hopefully, and we do this and get the answers before we vote on what you want to do, you kill two birds with one stone, maybe.
Right.
You know, we get the answers, get them mailed out to everybody in the meantime with some ideas of how much money we do have available, and then we meet after that to vote on how we do it.
I personally, yeah, well, anyhow, I don't have a problem with scheduling another meeting. What I do have a problem with is that the 2010 audit will continue to be delayed and delayed and delayed. And the other concern that I have is anyhow. So
Excuse me, if I may, the 2010 audits, nothing's gonna happen until we get some of these answers. Or they get some of these answers, nothing's gonna happen, that's for sure. Till Mason and Rich respond, and Mr. Boyer looks at their response, and he responds to why, nothing's gonna happen for a month, that's for sure. In my opinion, that's why.
Yeah, it's probably going to be November before anything.
Well,
is settled.
that may be, but at least we can have some answers to know how to vote by August 11th, that's all, hopefully.
Okay. So, commissioners, can you give us some sort of indication as to A, when you will contact the head of Mason and Rich and not someone down the chain?
It'll be done on Wednesday,
You
when we
can't-
have our meeting.
Oh, so you have to vote to call them?
I think we have to do that.
Except you voted that on the 25th of June. That was the discussion on the 25th of June, is that you would go to Mason and Rich,
Yeah.
and you said, Kathy, take care of that. And so
She did.
I
She
would
called.
assume
Yeah.
that that was a vote, because everyone nodded their head. And so now what we're suggesting.
She called but didn't send a registered letter.
What
Can't we do that?
what we are suggesting is that this lady may or may not be the partner in Mason and Rich, and that we probably, in this situation, she may or may not be able to make those decisions. And so it would be my suggestion that someone call one of the partners and follow it up with the letter.
Okay.
So that we aren't going to, the worker bee, and then having them spend 3 or 4 days trying to figure out what they're going to do. And
Madam Chairman, are you of the opinion that action could take place today? And that a certified letter could leave today? Is that sort of the recommendation, as opposed to waiting till Tuesday,
Well,
Wednesday?
I don't think they have to wait till Wednesday. I think it can certainly be done prior to Wednesday. I mean, they had a meeting at 9 o'clock, a posted meeting at 9 o'clock, that.
I'm just saying that urgency would tell me that would be done today before they left the room, but that's for them to do.
I will call the audit firm, RLB, or send them an email and find out what date Mr. Billio would be available to come and talk to us. And I just want to make sure that if it isn't a Monday, if that is okay. So, for example, if he could come next Thursday, is that a problem for people?
Aren't we paying him? It's like we've done.
Well, I know.
We wanted to come, but that's, I don't
But
know, maybe not.
he's also getting
suppose he
paid by
does other things, too.
lots of other people. But
Yeah, it was up.
I'm not sure necessarily why you want Mr. Bolio here, and I'll explain that. I think if we're going to contact Mason and Rich with the changes he's requiring, and to get those financial statements done, we need a time frame for Mason and Rich how quickly they can get those done. Your only question then to Mr. Bolio would be, how quickly can you give us our audit? That's the question. But if you're going to have him come in to explain why he wants to make these changes, then these guys don't have to contact Mason and Rich today, because they're not going to get any answers until you sit down with them in a week or 2 weeks or whatever it is. So what you really want him to do is to find out how quickly, even by phone call or email, if those changes get made, how quickly you can get your audit done. That's the question that you should know. It has absolutely nothing to do with the financials. Now, if Mason and Rich says, we can't change financials, we can't do it, then it's going to be up to the commissioners to say, okay, we're going to move this thing forward, we're going to sign that letter of engagement, we're going to have Bolio redo the financial statements, and then you're at the same question. How quickly can you get the financial statements done? How quickly can you get your audit done? And then the ripple effect from 2010 to 11, 12, and 13 will give you your answer on what the numbers are that you're looking for.
well, we do know that Julio has said that it can be done within 3 weeks.
Yeah, and three weeks as long as Mason and Rich can do their thing.
No, 3 weeks for the completion of this engagement to do the 2010 financials.
Okay, 2010. Mason and Rich already has the information, so I can't imagine it would take them anywhere near 3 weeks to reproduce financial statements. So that's the first answer. And again, if you want to have Mr. Bolio come in and explain his changes, that's fine, but that's not the answer you're looking for. The answer you're looking for really is, how quickly can you get that audit done once the numbers are done?
And also whether or not Mason and Rich is willing to do.
Yeah, and I think it's appropriate, they could certainly find out within the next day or two, a letter today, phone call today, or whatever it is, how quickly Mason and Rich can give you an answer, and how quickly they can turn those numbers around for Mr. Bolio to work with. It was my understanding when Mr. Bolio was talking a couple of weeks ago that he could sign off on the audit today if the financials were fixed, but he's not going to give us a positive audit if they're not fixed. So it certainly indicated to me he's already finished all of his work on the audit, and now he's just waiting for corrected financials. And I think if Mason and Rich can provide those to you, you can get it done fairly quickly.
I got a thought. He seems to get it a little bit.
He does get it.
Maybe between the treasurer and the commissioners and you, could you, when you get done here, just go down and craft the appropriate letters to both of these people, and you can decide on dates when you want to have the next meeting, and just coordinate this between everybody. Does that make sense? So we're asking the right questions of both Mr. Boyer and Mason and Rich to get what we need to find out. Is that logical or not?
That's fine with me.
Does that make sense? Maybe? Okay?
I'm here for a while, so.
If you could be, I didn't mean to volunteer your services.
I'm good.
That's quite all right.
Oh, yours either.
We're paying him so much.
But I should make sure we got the right questions.
Is that agreeable with the commissioners?
Yes, it is.
Madam Chair?
Okay.
Do we know who is responsible for financial statements for 11, 12, and 13?
Yes.
11 was Mr. Lightfoot.
No. Do we know, knowing that Mr. Lyford is not going to be able to do it.
11 was completed.
Well, 11, if I may, 11's completed, but obviously with the changes from 10, that will affect 11. And, but my understanding is Mr. Bolio has, again, created his matrix to plug all the numbers in for 12 and 13. So to go back and plug in 11's revised ending balance from 10 shouldn't be an issue. So he will have to restate 11, 12, and then he'll be able to complete the audit for 11, complete the audit for 12, and complete the audit for 13 as he completes the financial statements.
So
He won't do 13 because he doesn't have a contract for 13 audit.
But with current contracts that are existing, he can go through what we have just said and complete through 12?
Correct.
And I had indicated that it made me uncomfortable that, you know, the same firm is doing financials and audits. Is that not?
It's not, to me, it's not a concern because of the size of the firms. He has an accounting wing, he's got an audit wing. If this was a two-person operation, one being accountant, one being an auditor, I'd say that might be an issue. But we're talking about a firm that's reasonably large, that has kind of separation of duties. So I don't really see a major conflict in that.
Thank you.
And that's why he sends out and has signed this accounting services engagement letter.
Separate from the
Separate,
audit.
and then this one that says financial audit engagement letter.
And
Because
one,
it's two separate
departments.
yeah.
and one final question. Within the 13.4 or 15,000 that's in those budgets previously, will the financial and accounting audit responsibilities be covered within the budget amount?
Kathy's not here, but I believe she told me this morning, we have $12,000 encumbered.
Or 11,
For the balance right now.
10.
We've paid Bulio to do the work. We got 12,000 left.
And within what we have approved in terms of budgets,
Right.
we don't need to go outside of that.
Not right now.
But that's for what years?
We've paid Bulio approximately $61,000 to do the work.
Where did that come from?
It was the encumbered funds from each year, 11, 12, 13. That's why you're showing expenses in the budget.
So you're saying that encumbered was 61K,
No, I'm not saying, it's more than that,
just for the accounting?
yeah.
I find that hard to believe, but that's okay, because the total numbers don't add up to that, but that's neither here nor there.
I'm not gonna say any more until I see the facts in front of me.
And so, thank you. So, thank you. All right, I think that what we're going to do is simply leave it here. And I will ask the commissioners to give Representative McConkey and I half an hour to have some lunch. And then we will sit and compose this letter. And hopefully, in that time frame, someone can give Mason and Rich a call. Not to the lady that's going to do the thing, but the next, the principal, and see what their reaction is. And
Can you check with the treasurer, he may, in that timeframe, meet with him? I mean, I think it's important, he
Oh,
out
he's-
of the
yeah.
server, but
I'm not-
he may not want to wait. I don't know.
Well, do what you have to do.
Pardon?
That's fine. That's fine.
Representative Smith has commented.
Would you like to join us, Representative Smith?
But with all due respect to our treasurer, the idea of
signing the delegation letter to the second auditor is terrible. I don't care what size his firm is, I don't care if they're split. This is county government, this is public perception. There's enough negative public perception to begin with. I would strongly urge that that not occur. Bad idea.
Well, unfortunately, okay, the contracts have been signed through 13.
To do auditing and the financials?
To do the financials.
But not the audit.
Auditing has been contracted through 12.
With who?
The same firm.
The same firm is doing the financials and the auditing?
Yes. That's correct.
That's crazy. That's absolutely insane.
So.
Isn't that, I don't think that's unusual.
No, it's not.
I'm sorry, I don't know, but
it's not
it seems to be, now we can agree whether it's the right thing to do, I don't know. I disagree, but I don't think it's.
I think it's nuts.
But, well, maybe we bring that up at some other meeting and change it for 14 meetings. I think you're stuck now.
Okay. So, we will get back together and,
You're going to recess, right? Not adjourn?
No.
You're going to adjourn?
You got a 91A issue here, Madam Chairman, if you don't.
Yeah. We get two
Because this
commissioners.
meeting isn't posted after lunch. You either
Just a recess.
recess it, we're all set. Welcome to 91A.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. The three commissioners, thank you. I appreciate that. But the delegation doesn't have to stay. Unless you choose to. But there's really, we'll get the letter together and. Can you call another meeting?
Can I clarify something?
I will give you as much notice as I possibly can. Yes.
Yeah, can I clarify something? I just want to follow up what Commissioner Bobson said. He had a conversation with Ron Goulier on June 5th, and Ron Goulier put a conversation into writing and sent an email on June 10th.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I did a little harder the next time, so I'm sure of whether I did it.
He was out, Ron was out to lunch. Be back at 1 o'clock.
I'm not talking about Ron.
Okay.
I'm talking about Mason and Rich.
I asked Jack to call them because he's the one with all the knowledge and he said
You did?
what, I don't know what to do.
Okay. Well, he's coming back, so I don't know.
1 o'clock, I think, or
I don't know.
1:15?
Did you see him?
Jack? I don't know whether he's coming back or not.
Well, he's downstairs, I think he is. Said he was, I thought he said he was coming on.
Yeah, he said he would be back.
Okay.
What would we do? Close that email to, from Julio's and say where the others are? He sent the letter with 10 adjustments.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
You want me to recite what it should say?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a second.
This is really simple.
Go ahead.
Okay, it should say, based on our telephone conversation of June 25th, our current auditors have identified certain adjustments that need to be made to the 2010 audit. Attached is a copy of those adjustments. Please verify when the revised statements can be prepared and sent to us. Sincerely, Commissioners. Done.
Okay.
You don't want to be antagonistic.
No, no.
You want to reference the fact that you've already put them on notice that there's some changes that are coming.
Now, who did they have the conversation with on the 25th?
One of the accountants in there that said, well, you're going to have to talk to so-and-so, and she's on vacation until tomorrow. And it kind of keeps the process simple. But before, and we can send that out, but before we actually mail this, I've asked Kathy to call Ron Bolio to verify that the adjustments that he's given us, which is now the second set, the first set was, he's corrected the first set that he gave us, that the set that he gives us is the one and final set of adjustments that are going to be made. Because once these statements are redone, they're not going to be redone a second time. So if he verifies that what we now have in hand is the current and final adjustments to be made for 2010, then those are the ones that will be attached to the letter. And in the meantime, I told Kathy that from an accountant to accountant, I'd be happy to call and talk to the people at Mason and Rich on the county's behalf, explaining what the adjustments are and why we feel they need to they're responsible for it. They've already admitted that there's some changes that need to be made. And I'd be more than happy to make that phone call, but I can't do that until after we know from Ron Bolio that it's the correct adjustments. And if the right person to talk to is back tomorrow, then that's the right person to talk to. But I don't mind calling this afternoon and try to talk to one of the principals or whatever of the firm if that's something that you want done. I have no problem with that.
I think that's myself. I think that's important.
Yep.
Only to let them know the seriousness of
Sure.
where we're coming from.
And I think that's certainly appropriate. I have absolutely no problem doing that. But again, I just want to verify that when I look at that set of adjustments, and there's only 6 or 7 adjustments, so it's not a huge number of adjustments being made, that they're final. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Because I was a little disappointed in getting the initial copy that Commissioner Babson had received, and I looked through them, and then a day later or 2 days later, Kathy Gary sent me a revised set of adjustments. That's not appropriate. They're done once and that's it.
Okay.
So,
I wrote something down.
Yep, sure.
That I think follows sort of what you're saying,
sure.
and you don't have to use my words, but I felt that it would be much easier if I gave the commissioners something in writing.
Sure.
So that they can then move forward with haste and so on. I said, we have contracted with RLB and Company to complete the county's 2010 audit. In reviewing the financial statements prepared by your firm, they have identified, I use the term mischaracterized entries.
Okay.
In the financial statement for FY 2010. See attachment.
Okay.
That's what
Yep.
We request your firm take action to correct the identified errors. If you have questions concerning the recommendation made by RLB and Company, please contact them directly. We also request you provide the time frame when these corrections can be accomplished, as we cannot continue with the 2011 and 12 audits until 2010 is completed.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't finish that.
That's right. That's fine.
And I mean, this, this is just...
Sure. No, I think that's fine. We can, I think, combine that along with the maybe just noting the prior phone call that we had alerted them to as well, and just put that in letter form, and as soon as we get the okay that it's that the adjustments are the final adjustments, then we put it in the mail. And that should be this afternoon. Ron is not due back in his office apparently until 1 or 1:30.
Right, yeah. That's
so,
why he wasn't able to come.
Yeah.
So I will turn this over to you.
Yeah, I'll take it and we'll go downstairs and we'll...
I've got my version, it's shorter, but I think Representative Umberger's is better.
I don't know about that, Dave.
In discussion with our current and auditing firm, we have been informed that there are several accounting errors in the financial statements which you did for Carroll County in 2010. Please find enclosed a list of needed adjustments, which please find a list of adjustments which need verification or correction.
Okay. Yeah, I think hers is a little softer tone. I think the one thing you want to
surprise.
Well, the one thing you want to get away from is you don't want to say you made a mistake.
Right.
You know, they've already admitted that maybe they've got to look at something. So don't put it in writing saying you made a mistake. We want you to fix it. Take a slightly softer approach to it, but tell them that it has to be done. I think yours is fine. So we'll just massage that a little bit and send a copy of that along with the adjustments necessary. And I can't imagine it, only because I know how I do financial statements. If I make some adjustments, a few minutes later I hit the button and they print out.
Yep.
So I can't imagine that it's a huge deal for them. The fact that it's 4 years old and John did them and he's no longer with the firm and all that, I don't know if that throws a monkey wrench into it, because he has the records and they don't, but the county paid for the services, so the county records. So there shouldn't really be a huge issue in cleaning up the trial balance, having them plug in the new numbers and printing out some, and as I say, even if there's a small fee attached because it's something else, that's not an issue, I don't think.
Cheaper than $15,000.
Well, it's certainly cheaper than having somebody recreate the wheel, and that's really what the Bolio firm is going to do with 2010, recreate the wheel, and we don't need that. They've kind of created it for 11 going forward, but we don't need them to go back and recreate 2010. So.
Okay, so I will leave this.
I'm good.
With you.
Yep.
And when you have signed the letter, if you would email me a copy.
Yeah, I would say at the latest tomorrow morning, if we have to wait for Ron to get back to us on that final draft of changes, but at the latest tomorrow morning, I would think.
Okay.
All right.
Jack, in your opinion, what are the odds that we'll get into a match between Mason and Rich, and Bulio over Rich said it's done properly, and Bulio says no, it isn't.
First of all, there's not going to be any, there shouldn't be any discussion at all about the insurance, the interest, because the girl who actually, Kathy actually talked to at Mason or Rich, said, oh no, that's not the way you're supposed to do it. So she's already admitted that the interest piece of it is incorrect. Now, as far as the prepaid insurances, that may have gone back to even a prior year. But, prepaid is prepaid. You either prepaid it or you have to expense it. And I think what Kathy was telling me initially was that there was a prepaid created because in 1 year, based on the insurance company you were dealing with or whatever, they made like a 13th payment. They made the January payment in December. So that's a prepaid. It goes on the account in December, in January as an expense. Mm-hmm. That was never adjusted back. But that could have been 2006, 2007. Who knows when it was?
And is it going to be $500,000? I don't think.
Well, it could be a chunk of that, and the reason I say that is apparently because you have different health insurances for the different departments. I think it's the sheriff's department that requires payment well in advance. So there's a month or two prepayment in the sheriff's department. So they require upfront payment way in advance. So, and if that's, I don't know what that is, $70,000 a month, $80,000, whatever it is, that should legitimately be on the books as a prepaid insurance at the end of every year. But from my understanding, some of the other insurances, because of one payment somewhere along the line that was done prior to the end of the year, it carried through as a prepayment. That has to be, and I'm going to think that it's somewhere around $300,000.
Well,
but
the prepaid expenses that show in 2009 were $266.
Yeah. So
how much, Karen?
$266.
$266.
What are you looking at?
The audit.
The audit.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, you get that.
So then, at the end of 2010, I believe he said it was up to $500,000. Well, that's certainly inappropriate. There's something got put in the wrong bucket.
I've got on page 5.
Thank you.
Statement 3.
So something got put in the wrong bucket in 2010 that made that increase from 250 to 500. Well, that 250, or maybe even more than that, if it's just sheriff that's being paid up front, is too much. Maybe to the tune of 300 to 350,000. You add that to the 600,000, there's your $900,000 adjustment. One of the issues that, and again, I don't know whether his adjustments will fix this. It seemed to me, he said when he was sitting here on the 25th that the fund balance was recorded at 4.2 million or something, and now it's going to be 1.7. Well, that's $2.5 million difference, not $900,000 difference.
But we have also expensed out of that over $4 million.
Well, so over the years, but what he's talking about is at the end of the day in 2010, it would have shown $4 million. Well, part of that may be, and I don't know for the fact yet, that may be because some of the monies from the enterprise fund for the nursing home all of that money was flowing through the general fund.
Well,
which it shouldn't, now he says, well, it really should have gone through the enterprise fund.
Yeah, if you look at 2009, which is what we have, on page 7, it shows the general fund with a fund balance of 2.8.
Yeah.
And the nursing home, or other governmental funds, which I assume is the nursing home, water, I don't know, whatever else it is, of 800,000. So, so if he's talking about combined funds, that's one thing. That's right.
And so maybe combined funds, that's very true. Is it appropriate that because everything was run through the general fund for the nursing home, that the excess stay in the general fund, or does there have to be some accounting function to put that into the general fund? I don't know the answer to that. I'm not in the auditing business from that standpoint. So I don't know if that's appropriate or not. But long story short, if we've gone from 3.8 that year to what was reported $4 million in 2010, but he's really saying with a $900,000 adjustment, it's only 1.7. Is it 1.7 in the general fund, and he's not adding the nursing home excess in to make it back to where we think it is? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But regardless of that whole argument, we'll have the answers when these adjustments are made and the audit is complete. And if we can get that done, if the letter goes out tomorrow, and my intent would be if we can contact Mason and Rich with the final adjustments, we'll email those or fax those to them with the understanding that they're getting this certified letter in the mail as a backup. And that could be done this afternoon or again first thing tomorrow morning. So the process can happen today or first thing in the morning once we get that verification.
Okay.
So, if Mason and Rich agrees to make the adjustments, there's really no need to meet with them.
There's no need to meet with them or Bolio until Bolio says, I have your audited statement completed. Because that's really the whole process. Bolio indicated that he's done, but he can't sign off until the adjustments are made. So he's indicated that he's already completed the audit for 2010, and once these adjustments are completed and he sees those new financial statements, all he has to do is sign the bottom line and you're done.
Well, he also has to write up the, whatever they call them.
Well, his audit statement
Right.
is just a one-page front cover of what the financials are. All of the notes and all are part of the financial statements, and those are done as a routine process when you do the financial statements.
But I don't. Okay, yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if in his audited cover sheet, he said he may even say something to the effect that his firm is new to the audit. They've gone through the process. They identified some issues that have been corrected, and now I find the audit to be complete and finished, or however they word their stuff. And then you're done. And then he can go right on to 2011, and he's already done a lot of the process for the next 3 years. He's already done 11 and 12 pretty much running forward. He's got to change his starting numbers in 2011 based on now what the new ending numbers are for 2010. But again, that's a simple, for me, a very simple process.
Simple for them too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The County of Carroll has not presented the management's discussion and analysis report. Required supplemental information that accounting principles generally accepted in the United States has determined is necessary to supplement, although not required.
Yeah, that's more. It's one of these things that happens. It's used a lot more in business,
Okay.
where business management and the executives will give a summary of what happened the prior year, where they see the future going, and all of that, and that's usually attached to the final financial statements. Generally, in a situation like this, unless the commissioners wanted to make a statement about what they see happening in the county going forward or whatever, it's not necessary to have in the report.
So this appears that they are using the GASB
Yeah.
and not GAAP.
Right.
And so I would assume that the other firm.
Yeah, Bolio should be using the same. That's I think they call it the Government Accounting Standards Board.
Right.
And that is appropriate for this type of an organization, and I can't imagine Bolio is using anything other than that.
I can't either.
And that's why to send this back to Mason and Rich and expect an argument, it's not going to happen. They're using the same principles. It shouldn't happen. There's no issues there. They should say, fine, we'll make your adjustments, print your reports, have it done with.
So I will wait with
Bated breath.
semi-bated breath.
Okay.
And I'm sorry that there was a misunderstanding about when the meeting was going to start again. I thought it was going to start at 12:15.
That's fine.
Everybody else thought it was going to start at some other time, so I guess
Well,
if you take the majority rules,
we're good.
I lost.
Right,
Okay?
that's right, we're good.
So,
All right, we'll get this thing done.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very
Good.
much. Oh.
Thank you, Jeff.
Adjourn. Motion.
So moved.
Okay.